Well, my name is Randy McSpadden. I was an assistant minister at Oakland starting in 1973, and it's good to be back with you today. I wanted to tell you a story somewhat about my family and the crisis that we're in, and especially around the experiences that many of us have with fear. My father grew up on a farm in Bealton, Virginia. And when the stock market crashed in 1929, his father, my grandfather, was desperate to try to save a 170-acre farm that the family had. The McSpaddens started to lose the value in their crops, and then the farm equipment had to be auctioned off. Livestock was sold, and suddenly they realized they did not have enough money to keep the farm, so everything that they had invested in the farm up until 1931 was suddenly gone. And so my grandmother and grandfather moved with their 7 children from Bealton, Virginia. They walked into an uncertain future, and in front of them, they were not sure where they were going. All the children moved with their mother and father to Lexington, Virginia, where there were relatives. The McSpadden children were divided up into several households, and in time the older children were able to find jobs in Buena Vista and at the VMI at the Virginia Military Institute in Lexington. My father chose a different route at that time and went into the Navy. And my great aunt, who had been a missionary nurse to China, was able to bring the family back together by purchasing a home for them in a small town called Stuarts Draft. This traumatic experience of loss for my family that took place during the Great Depression and what we are going through today in this pandemic of the last 3.5 months is very similar. Both of them were societal dislocations that happened very quickly. The other thing is that it's global. It affected people all around the world. And it created a national financial crisis with so many people being unemployed in a short period of time, particularly in food, in agriculture, and in retail sectors of the economy. Also, at the same time, land and capital became very unstable, and the stock market was volatile. And to make matters worse, there was a crisis in leadership in the government at both periods of time amongst politicians. Long-standing societal problems, racism and poverty, also were highlighted during both the Great Depression and also the pandemic that we're experiencing today. So whether you lived in the 1930s or in 2020, no one can escape the trauma of loss in both periods of time. I know of people in this community who have lost jobs, lost income, and lost the value of their investments. Bills are still coming into my house, and creditors are expecting to be paid. We've lost face-to-face contact with family members. I had a physician friend who told me last week that some of her older patients have not been touched in 3 months. We've not been able to eat out or physically worship together here at Oakland. Last week, a minister of another church in our presbytery, who's been preaching to a camera in an empty sanctuary for the last 15 Sundays, told me that even though his congregation could not sing very well before the pandemic, the thing that he missed the most is their singing the Gloria Patri and the doxology on Sunday mornings. So like the Great Depression, big things and small things like singing in church have all been taken away, and the future's uncertain. I'm reminded of the patriarch Abraham, who also faced an uncertain future. You may recall the passage in Hebrews 11. By faith, Abraham set out for a place, and he set out for a place, not knowing where he was going. It's easy for us to be consumed with fear when we do not know what is up ahead. I think that any time we're facing multiple losses, it's normal to hunker down and to expect the worst. Fear causes us to have tunnel vision where we're only focused on what's up ahead and we forget about what has happened to us in the past. We forget the historical precedents in our lives. We forget that we have prevailed before in uncertain times. And like Abraham, he went out not knowing where he was going, and yet he became a great patriarch of a people, as many descendants as the stars in heaven, and as innumerable as the grains by the seashore. And likewise the Hebrew slaves left Egypt, not knowing where they were going, and they made it to the promised land. And we also need to remember that Jesus' disciples, after the crucifixion, were hiding out in a room in Jerusalem because of fear, not knowing what they were going to do. And yet they changed the religious landscape of much of the world. We need our collective history of faith. We need to remember. Now, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. We need to remember our family histories and all that our family members have overcome through the course of their lives. And we need to look at our own personal histories where we thought the bottom was going to fall out in our lives. And yet we are here today. Although each one of us have our own experiences of loss, in a larger sense, we are united with all the people of the world in going through the crisis that we're in today. As we remember the faith of our ancestors, we will make our way together through this uncertain time. Amen.